Hello and welcome back to the channel. I am the Heir of Carthage, and today we are back in Total War Warhammer 3, courtesy of battle footage that was given to us by Creative Assembly. Now chances are this battle is already out there on YouTube from another content creator, so some of you may have seen it, but I want to go through all these regardless of whether they're already posted, because I want to have a chance to let you all see it, and then not only that, but just kind of share some of my feedback on what I'm seeing. In the last battle, for instance, we discussed a lot about how it seemed like the AI was not particularly good at defending these minor settlements, and this time the player is going to be the one defending, and you get to see the Ogre Kingdoms in use here, and they're up against Khorne. Now, magic aside, right, which you can't really put magic aside in Warhammer 3, Khorne should be extremely good in a slug-out melee type environment like you could have in a minor settlement. But again, it's hard to put magic aside, so we'll see how that goes. The Ogres do use magic. Remember that Khorne does have spell resist. We saw their roster. There's a lot of spell resist. This is going to be an interesting one, as the Ogres have a lot of monstrous entities, and not a ton of missile capability, but they do have some. And in fact, how about we go take a look at their units real quick right now before this battle starts, so that you can get an idea of what the Ogres are going to be fielding. At the base of the Ogre roster, we're going to have Nobblers, which are an expendable unit with a high entity count, but very low stats. These units are clearly meant to be used as hit point sponges, since the Ogres rely heavily on units that are large. So there's also Nobbler Trapplers, which is a special edition of these that have an ability that when they're standing still, will slow down enemy units within its area. So it's a very short range use, but basically they get in the way and they slow down the units massively, reducing their charge bonus as well. Then we're going to have Ogre Bulls, which are going to be good against low armor units, and they're kind of a baseline Ogre, what do you call it, monstrous infantry. They do have the ability to break walls, and they have an ability called Ogre Charge, which basically reduces the penalty they have for charging a braced unit. We'll see that on many units. Next up we got Gorgers, which is kind of an interesting special unit. It's a lot like Morn Ghouls. They're unbreakable. They have Frenzy, and they're going to do a lot of damage against armored infantry or just infantry in general. And these units can actually be buffed with a special ability from Skrag the Slaughterer, which we'll see later, and that's what that Gorger thing indicates right there. And again, a lot of these Ogre units coming with the Wall Breaker ability, which will be good in a siege. They can basically just come busting through. A lot of their units aren't going to be in siege towers, so I'm sure that was a necessary add. We got Man-Eaters with great weapons. This is going to be an AP anti-large monstrous infantry that also has immune to psychology. And they have a pretty good leadership level already, so this is going to be a pretty tough unit for grinding down large armored enemy units. Also has Ogre Charge. Next up, we're going to see the Lead Belchers. This is a ranged missile unit with some kind of so-so melee capabilities after it runs out of ammunition. It is pretty limited ammunition, which is honestly a little disappointing. I'll have to see how this unit pans out, but it doesn't look very good to me right off the bat. It just seems like not enough ammunition, but I don't know. We'll wait and see how much damage they do. And then we got the Man-Eater Pistols. We've actually seen these in Warhammer 2. Again, immune to psychology. Very nice trait here. They fire whilst moving. They've got good AP weapon strength in melee, so this is a nice hybrid unit that's going to act as a ranged unit and then also as a pretty good monstrous infantry in melee against armored targets, again with Wall Breaker and the Ogre Charge mechanic. So nice well-rounded unit there. Next up we've got the Saber Tusk pack. This is going to be a very powerful against low armored type units. Very fast-moving, very high weapon damage, but they can rampage when they get hurt. It's going to be very good at cleaning up low-armor skirmishers and infantry. The Mornfang Cavalry Iron Fist variant here. This is going to be good AP weapon strength, high armor, a decent shield. You know, pretty slow for cavalry, but they're going to pack a wallop on the charge. And again, they're going to be able to attack walls, so a pretty nice utility cavalry here for the Ogres. Next up we got Crushers with great weapons, similar to Mornfangs, except even more armor, no shield, and they're AP anti-large, but they have an even larger charge bonus. So this unit is going to hit extremely hard on the charge and be used to take out large entities. Next up is the Giant, and like Giants that we've seen previously, this one is going to have very high armor-piercing weapon damage. low armor, but this one has really good leadership as well. I don't know if that's present on other giants, so it's pretty surprising though. But it will take wounds as it's a single entity, meaning as its HP drops, it will perform lower. We got a Nobbler Scrap Launcher here, which is a fairly quick-moving catapult unit that should be good against blobs of infantry, and honestly does decent AP anti-infantry, albeit at a low attack, but they could act as a secondary chariot into an infantry blob after they've expended ammo. Next up is the Stonehorn Harpoon Launcher. This is a massive single-entity monster with good AP anti-infantry weapon strength and good missile damage from a range of 250, and it can fire whilst moving. So this is going to be a nice multi-purpose unit here for the Ogres to have a little bit of flexibility to hit from range. It is missile resistant too to help it in a duel. We've got the Fire Belly up next. This is a Lore of Fire caster unit for the Ogres. It has a lot of special abilities, this magic breath before it enters battle. And then next up it's going to have the Tenderizer, which is going to increase weapon strength of itself. And then an explosion ability to help get it out of battles. And then here comes all the Lore of Fire spells up next that we are familiar with. Should be a very useful caster. Lore of Fire has been proven to be an excellent lore over 2 games, and no doubt will continue to be. In Game 3, it's good at blob busting, it's good for buffs, good for a lot of things. So he can encourage, cause fear, hide in the forest, and a wall breaker like the other ones. It does have Ogre Charge. We're going to have the wounds because it's a single entity, Kindle Flame, which we've seen before, and then this Rag Banner here increases leadership. He is missile resistant and fire resistant. Does need missile resistance because his armor is very low and he's a large target. Decent weapon strength and magical and flaming attacks in melee as well. And then we've got Skrag the Slaughterer over here, who's also a spellcaster with good AP anti-infantry weapon strength and decent charge bonus. Moderate speed, definitely not fast, but definitely not crazy slow. He does have this some special abilities here that he's going to be going through. These are actually some of the Lore of the Great Maw spells. I'm not going to cover each of these. You can pause it and look at them. But Lore of the Great Maw is going to be good for increasing damage, explosions, and basically breaking up blobs, would be my opinion, and helping to buff some of the units. He does cause fear. He can encourage, again, hide in forest. We're going to see Wall Breaker and Ogre Charge and wounds. But coming up after that is going to be some special abilities that are interesting. We've got this blood gruel here, which is going to basically help regenerate while he's casting, and then this one is the one that improves the Gorgers. You can take a look at it. You'll have to pause it and go back because I didn't have time to, but basically he can buff Gorgers and help them do a lot of extra damage. Then he's got this extra ingredients, which is basically a buff to the Winds of Magic. So there's the Ogre roster that's going to be present in this battle. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, as I did in one of my previous videos, I'm going to let you all watch this gameplay version so you can see what the gameplay and the UI and kind of the user experience looks like here. And then afterwards, I will have an uncommentated cinematic version of the same battle for those of you who are looking for just close-up shots and you just want to see what the game looks like. So if that's all you're concerned about, feel free to skip forward. That will be later in the video. And of course, if you want to see both, then please feel free. Now, before I get into the commentary of this battle, if when you get to the end of this battle you enjoyed it and you want to see more videos like this, make sure and hit that like button. And then, of course, if you do want to know when I've uploaded a new one, feel free to subscribe. And then if you want to be notified, they've got the bell down there as well. But yeah, it's going to be another interesting battle. The minor settlements, the maps do seem massively improved. However, there are a lot of entry points. I would say it's very similar to Troy. Except that I think the maps have been expanded probably even further compared to what we saw in Troy, but a similar feel in the sense that there are multiple choke points for the defending player, but that also offers multiple entry points for the attacking player. And although there are some flying units in Troy, we're going to see a lot of flying units in Warhammer, so still a lot of interesting dynamic that can come into play on these maps. You can see that there are supply points and a capture point, so the Ogres are going to want to defend those. They have used some of their supply points to build up different towers and stuff that are going to assist them as well. I would expect, with the AI, historically speaking, in Total War being very bad at knowing how to allocate its resources to break choke points, I would expect the players are going to be able to get some massive kills on the AI using magic and SEM blobs and stuff like that. Again, unless we see some big changes in the way that the AI manages their ability to cast spells, because defending in Warhammer is kind of a bold game, right? Because with magic out there, players aren't always incentivized to sit in a tight defensive formation, right? You can get utterly destroyed by breath spells and other things. So I am gonna, all I'm really getting at here is I'm very interested to see how this mechanic turns out. Now we got a couple of lead belchers on this flank. I'm trying to see how much damage they do. Obviously the player's kind of moving around here, trying to defend, because we've got some Bloodthirsters and the Exalted Bloodthirster here for Khorne that have landed over here in melee, and they are tough, and they're about to be backed up by what looks like some very heavy cavalry, and then it looks like they're going to be backed up by Chaos Warriors dual weapons, and more of the Slaneshi, or sorry, not Slaneshi, the dual wielding. Sorry, I'm getting it all wrong here. The demonic infantry that does AP damage. There's going to be a lot of reinforcements coming into this big melee. That's actually where Skrag and the Firebelly are at as well. So that Firebelly ought to be able to add a little bit here to the abilities of the troops nearby. See that Khorne does have a skull cannon, and there are nobblers being used in a couple of these positions to help slow down the enemy as they come in, and honestly that's what nobblers are needed for. They're needed to slow things down, they're needed to be the hit point sponge. The ogres are going to rely heavily on monstrous infantry, and one thing we all know from monstrous infantry in game 1 and 2 is that while they're good, they don't usually do best when they're acting alone, right? They need that support from more standard units in order to be most effective. And I don't think that it's going to be any different for the ogres. So I think nobblers are going to be a very important unit for the ogres if they're going to be effective, even into the late game, potentially. Anyway, you got the giant and other units here, but this is just a beast of a melee. The first Bloodthirster there for Khorne is going down. At least I think it's a Bloodthirster. I may be getting some of these names wrong, but it's one of the, you know, flying demons. Then we've got the Exalted Lord there too. They did bite off a little more than they could chew initially with that melee, which not surprising. And we've got the Stonehorn Harpoon launcher in that battle as well, so that's a lot of single entity bashing, and I think that fight started out poorly for Khorne, but my guess is it'll start to flip because Khorne has more cavalry and infantry support there, and then over time the ogres are going to get overwhelmed. I haven't seen a lot of magic dropped on that blob yet either, and so again, without magic being dropped there to even that out, Khorne is probably going to start chewing his way, and there comes some. This is definitely needed. I think that's the maw explosion we have coming here. It's a pretty big explosion area. Let's see what it does. Oh yeah, that's a lot of damage, and that right there is why I mentioned earlier that I think the AI is going to struggle in these defenses, and it's because the player should be able to create some just really stupendous blobs and really milk them with SEMs and spells, and I think cause some pretty extensive damage to much larger attacking forces, which honestly I think is going to be kind of fun for the players. Like, I don't think that people are going to hate it, but I do think that there could be some people getting frustrated maybe sometimes that the AI is just so bad. But then again, I don't know if the AI was like super good like a player. A lot of people just probably wouldn't play the game because they'd constantly be losing. So I guess you got to strike that balance in there somewhere. Look at that Soul Grinder for Khorne. It's just sitting back and firing using its missile weapons. It has very powerful missile weapons. Then over here, it looks like Khorne's troops are slowly breaking through the nobblers, but I have to say I'm impressed with how long the nobblers have held in the places that we've seen them in this battle. Their stats look really bad, but it's good to see them holding. See the player here using up more of their supplies to try and put up some more defensive points. And honestly, despite the bad control from the AI, you're seeing here that when Khorne is given a lot of time in melee, it causes a lot of damage. Look at the power bar. Showing fairly close. Now, do be aware, though, that sometimes the power bar can get a little bit gamed by missile units and artillery and stuff like that, so it's not always a perfect representation of how the fight is going, but I mean, just overall, that power bar is not unhappy with Khorne at the moment, so you can see that melee, like I said, is definitely going to fall in favor of Khorne when it extends, and that's good, right? That's a good thing. I think it's what Khorne's faction is meant to be. It's meant to be kind of like the ultimate melee. So Skrag is going to have to fall back. I guess he's just kind of ready for some second breakfast. He's going to use one of his spells here that's going to be similar to the Foot of Gork, but it's like a giant iron fist. Really cool looking spell there, and a pretty good placement to help give him some cover as he tries to escape that battle. And you can see that the player is using this map to their advantage, falling back to the innermost defensive position, where the AI is going to have to come across these bridges or fly in, one of the two. And that should give him a very defensible final stand here to try and wear down these forces of Khorne, which up until this point honestly have done a pretty decent job. And I do like the dynamic here with the supplies. As the player falls back, they can decide a little bit ahead of time, okay, I want to start building a tower here, or some type of defensive structure. It takes some time to build, but probably works out okay, you know, as they're falling back. Look at that Soul Grinder getting in here and just wrecking. That Fire Belly is trying to escape here. He's going to use the explosion ability. But as tough as that Fire Belly is, with that low armor and stuff, it's going to get wrecked up in a fight like that by Khorne. To be fair, though, it does have a lot of flame resistance, so if anything's attacking it with flaming damage, it will certainly take a lot longer for it to get that done. You can see Khorne, led by the AI here, moving in and will possibly start to contest some of the supply points, which you would think the AI should be trained to do, because you can see the supplies replenishing up there, and it would behoove the attacker, I mean, unless they just have a really clear path to victory, to try and take away those supply points, because they can be used to continuously build towers and defenses that are going to make life worse for the attacker. It is good to see that we've got the Great Bloodthirster there flying around and not just going straight to its death, the Exalted Bloodthirster, I should say. But there it went down to the Fire Belly. So it tried to get greedy, come in for one last brawl there, and the Fire Belly that had kind of regrouped came back, but now the Soul Grinder looks like it's going to finish off the Fire Belly. And the forces of Khorne now don't have their leader, and that's not going to be ideal. There's a fair few Nobblers left too. We're going to come back into the final defense. So you can see that the Ogre forces have taken quite a lot of damage, but the forces of Khorne have also taken a lot of damage, and these are going to be attrition battles. Definitely going to be attrition battles. That Soul Grinder has a lot of ammo. If Khorne will use it right, potentially a game changer. However, we still got some ammo up here for the Ogres too on these lead Belchers. And then there's another unit coming in there, which I believe is maybe the catapult. It's hard to see from this angle, but if that's true, then the Ogres also have some defenses. Look, this is a very nice defensive position here. See, the player can hole up, and they've got support from those buildings that they were pulling up. So this is going to be a nice defensive point. I do like the map design. There are a ton of opportunities for choke points. There's a ton of opportunities for friendly cavalry who are on the defensive to be maneuvering around and to get in behind these choke points, deliver rear charges for flyers to outflank. Again, map design looks good. It's large. It's got a lot of opportunities. There's room for charges. There's tighter points for defense. So I think overall it looks pretty solid. Here's the Ogre missile defenses, and you can see that Soul Grinder opening up on Skrag. He may want to fall back. Right now, Skrag looks to be deciding who to heal, though. It looks like he's going to go for a heal on himself. Yeah, look at those lead Belchers. I'm trying to get a feel for how much damage they're going to do. I'm not totally sold on that unit, but this is only one battle. And I'm going to have to see more to know how the lead Belchers are going to stack up. You all can tell me what you think based on, say, like their stats versus what we see in Game 2. I would imagine, although I would expect some differences in the way stats are going to work in Game 3, that it'll probably follow a pretty similar pattern. Now at this point, you can look at that power bar. It's starting to really swing in favor of the Ogres, so it looks like they are starting to get what they need here. There's a Blood Reaper there. It's going to be attacked by those Mournfang cavalry and Crushers, and I don't think it's going to survive that. I'm not uber familiar with the stats of that Blood Reaper, but those are two pretty hard-hitting heavy cavalry units that are going to have it totally surrounded. So I don't imagine the Blood Reaper is going to live to tell the tale there. And look at the supply count. Even though Khorne started to contest it, still a lot of supplies there for the defending player. Now in a survival battle, those supplies can be turned into reinforcements at time as well, and replenishment, heals, and all kinds of stuff. Now this isn't a survival battle, it is different. So I think that the supplies are limited to defensive structures, buildings, and fortifications, stuff like that. Yeah, look at that. That Blood Reaper got wrecked. So Khorne is going to be finished, and that should be basically the end of the battle. I do hope you all enjoyed this one. And like I said, stay tuned. The cinematic footage is coming your way. And I've got more of these that I'll be releasing this week until I've showed them all. And like I said, they're out there already from other creators, but I want to be able to look at them, give my 2 cents, and let you all hear and see your feedback as well, which make sure to leave that in the comments. Anyway, HeirofCarthage signing off of this one, but again, stay tuned if you want to see the cinematic footage. I will see you next time.
Although that is not us. to the grunt.